Hey folks, today I'd like to just go ahead and show you how I go about splitting my firewood. And maybe there's some tips you can use here, or maybe you know something, you see something I'm not doing, feel free to put a comment below. But let me just walk you through and show you how I split firewood. A few years back, I watched a video about using a tire to split firewood, and I'll tell you, the greatest thing you can do if you split firewood with a maul is to use a tire to hold the wood up. And what I did is I just I practiced with different heights of a chopping block. Once I found one that I was comfortable with, I then went ahead and just got some lag bolts, and I went ahead and lag bolted my tire into my chopping block. And I tried to put these lag bolts as far in as possible so there's as little chance for the maul to hit them as possible. And then the other thing I did is around the outside of the tire at the low point, I took my hole saw here, I think this is about a 1-inch bit, and I drilled some nice holes. So when there's water in this chopping block, that water will drain out as opposed to just sitting there and collecting mosquitoes and whatnot. When it comes to choosing a maul, actually let me just show you this too. Usually when I'm splitting, what I have is I have my chopping block with a tire, and then I have another chopping block here with no tire. And the nice thing with this is I have somewhere to lean my tools, but also if I have a log that's so big I can't get it in my chopping block, I will put it onto the chopping block with no tire, and I can split it there and then put it in. The worst thing you can do for a maul is to go ahead and hit that into the ground. If you take a look at this maul, it's got a nice edge on it. I just got this a couple weeks ago. And you want to keep that edge as nice as possible. This is the maul I've been using for about 12 years, and it still works, but if you take a look, you can see how blunt that edge has become. And that's another thing I'd like to say, is I would recommend that you try to use, maybe keep 2 mauls, keep one that you're only going to use on the chopping block, and then keep a second maul that you're going to use where you're going to hit the ground. This maul weighs about 12 pounds, and this one weighs about, I think it's 3.5 pounds. It's very light. This was really cool, 10 years ago when I bought it, but I'm really liking this one lately. What I usually do is, before I start splitting, what you want to do is just take your maul out, and you're not looking to take off a lot of material. But if you hit a knot, or if you hit a stone, you're going to have little chips and high points in your maul. So I just got some metal sandpaper, and I'll just very lightly go over the tip of my maul just to knock those spots out. I don't really even want to remove metal, I just want to remove any of those bumps. And they make stones for this as well, and it would be great, someday I should pick one up, is to get a stone. And when I'm removing that metal, I try not to remove the metal to make the edge of the blade really fine, because it's going to be more brittle. I try to actually sharpen at a bit of an angle there, so the metal is thicker and it's a more blunt edge. You're not looking for like a razor sharp edge, you want more of a blunt edge on your maul. So the other thing I'll do is I make sure I've got steel toe boots on. I have yet to hit my feet with the maul, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I do have muck boots, rubber boots. I don't wear them when I'm splitting wood because that's just silly. I keep a pair of safety glasses on because you'd be amazed how often things will fly off the wood. I try to keep both clear safety glasses and sunglass safety glasses, because on days like today it's going to be too dark if I had the sunglasses on. And then we can go ahead and start splitting. Splitting mauls, you know, when I see people with log splitters splitting wood like this, it kind of seems silly because it almost is easier. Well, it's easier for 5 or 10 minutes with this small than it is, but if you're going to split all day. But pieces of wood about this size are just made for splitting mauls. So usually what I'll end up doing is I'll just put the piece of wood in the chopping block and start splitting. And what you can do is you can either put just one piece at a time, which is what I usually do. I usually don't come outside to split wood to get a ton done. I usually split wood like at an hour to 2 hours tops at a time. And I just come out here and I usually start out going at an easy pace, and then usually about 10 or 15 minutes in, it kind of kicks in and you get that drive to get more done, or you have a few good splits. But usually I'll only go for an hour or 2 hours at a time splitting wood. And what you can do is you can either put one piece at a time in the chopping block, or you could load this chopping block up with a whole bunch of pieces and split it all at the same time. It would be more productive. What was I going to say? The other cool thing with this tire is you don't have to bend down to the ground every time you split one. You don't have to bend down to the ground every time you knock it over. And also, if you do happen to miss, you know, I've hit this plenty of times with the maul, and it keeps you from glancing into the ground as well, keeping your maul sharper. I would say just practice with the height of your chopping block. You know, I wouldn't just commit to one right away. See what works for you, higher, lower, where you feel the most power, the most comfort, and then go with that. And then, you know, you probably can't see from there, but this one has a nice square cracks in it. You want to follow the cracks of the log. This is a maple, so it might take a couple blasts, but just, you know, line her up, and I totally missed the crack on that one. I guess we'll call that nerves. But then, you know, that's the nice thing to block. I didn't just bend over to pick that piece up. And then I've got a crack coming this way, so we'll try to line this one up as well. And that's the, I really like this lighter maul, I gotta say. That was how my swung looked with the light maul. And the heavy maul, I mean, there's definitely, it's almost like I don't even have to swing with this thing. It just kind of falls on it and splits it. But I like the feel. I feel like I'm driving a sports car with this guy. Now, I got this maul at the Big Blue box store. There is a company called Wetterlings and Husqvarna that make, they're a little bit heavier mauls, but they're forged. And I think, you know, maybe if I have some extra money at some point, I'll get one. This one was probably 30, 40 bucks. The Husqvarna is like 80 bucks, and the Wetterlings is around 120 or so. But this one, it does tend to dull pretty quickly because I think it's machined, not forged. And I think if it was forged, it might be a little harder metal. And cut a little bit better. Stay sharp a little bit better. But, you know, with wood like this, you kind of just get into a rhythm. And, you know, it's just, if you haven't used a tire, I hope you're just watching this, and the next thing you do is go find a nice tire. That one's getting a little rotten. Find a nice tire and start splitting. The other nice thing with the tire is you can lean the piece of wood against the tire as opposed to trying to lean the wood up just perfectly. Now, when I get pieces of wood with knots, half of the battle for me is if I can be the guy cutting the wood, I'll try to make it so that the knots are always at the end of the log. And I always try to split with the clean wood at the top so I can start the force of the log splitting. So by the time we get to the knot, it just pushes apart. Whenever I see a knot, like on this piece of wood, I'm going to split it this way. I'm going to split so that if the knot's on this side, I'm going to split right through the knot. Actually, maybe I'm not. this piece of wood's got a pretty good crack going right here into the nut. So a lot of the times what I'll try to do is split away from the knot and leave the knot separate, and then I'll either try to split the knot through the knot once it's kind of separated from the wood, or I'll put it on the cutting pile. And what I usually do is I have what's called the 3-hit rule. If I hit a piece of wood 3 times and nothing starts to happen, I usually put it into the cutting pile, and I'll take a chainsaw and I'll cut it instead of hitting it with a maul. It's not to say that I couldn't do it with the maul, but I just would rather not wear out my body mindlessly hitting a piece of wood when I could just use the saw. So let's see how this one goes. See, at the top of the log here, we've got a crack right here. So I'm gonna split it along this crack and see if we can cut the knot right out. See, and then, so there you go, there's your knot. And now that I've got the knot cut out, I will give it a shot to split it through the knot. And this is where it usually takes a couple blows because it'll get caught. This is fairly small. But if I can, again, that's fairly small. And if anybody out there is a regular wood splitter, I'm sure you can see that I'm starting out with some fairly straightforward pieces. But let me just show you this. And I really don't do this very often. So what you can do is just put a whole mess of wood in there, and you could probably even put more in, and then just go ahead and split it all at once. And this definitely would increase productivity, there's no doubt about that. And again, these are all what I would consider easy pieces of wood to split. This is where, if all wood was like this to split, I wouldn't even consider getting a log splitter. And I gotta say that that new maul, it's just so lightweight. This one is just such a bear to pick up. And maybe that means I need to hit the gym a little bit more. So here's another knot one. Now this one might be a little more tricky. We got a piece of oak. That's something else I want to touch on is a lot of times I'll see people saying oak is this really hard to split wood. And I'm going to say most wood is fairly, I don't want to say easy to split. Most wood wants to split. The only thing is if you get the ones with the knots in them, that's where you have your issues. I have split elm on my property, and elm does not want to split. So I don't know if I just ended up just manhandling that wood or not, but elm is tough, ulmus, and then I have seen a video with sweet gum, which is liquid ambar. That's another one that they're very stringy woods, they're tough to split, but every wood has a different way of being split. There's a different best way, and I guess splitting wood is kind of a mental game too. It's more than just brute force. I split a London plane tree, platanus, and London plane tree, the pieces were about this big, and there's actually like the first 4 to 6 inches is this very soft wood, and then the inside is almost like a separate tree. So first you have to split the outside, then you have to split the inside. Oak, the key is you just want to get smaller pieces, and once you break it from the larger piece to the smaller piece, it splits remarkably well if there's no knots. So this guy here, we've got a knot in the bottom, and seems like this one wants to split. At the top of the log, I got a crack going through the knot. At the bottom of the log, it's kind of all confused. So we'll try this one from the top, see what happens. And that was a pretty good bite. I think if I whack it a couple more times, I'll have it. It's nice to have good control more than power, because you'll be so much ahead of the game if you hit the same crack again and again, as opposed to hitting even a half an inch away. Sometimes you'll be splitting, and if you could just get that maul in the same crack, you'd have the log. But if you go a half inch over, you start a whole new split, and then you gotta really fight with it. So I would say try for aim more than power. So here we are, we're splitting smaller logs again, and I'll consider that a victory, but these aren't really challenging pieces at all so far. Now this one might be a bit tricky because of the crook in it, and if it moves a lot, I'll just put it on the cut pile. That worked out okay. Now this wood is seasoned. I've noticed that seasoned wood splits a lot better. Madison, 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 hey, that's enough. Thank you. I've noticed that seasoned wood definitely splits a lot better than fresh wood, but yeah, that'll just go on the overnight pile. But I haven't hesitated. I would definitely take a shot at fresh wood, because the sooner you split it, the sooner it's going to start to season. So now here's another good one with some knots in it for you. So I've got my knots at the bottom where the crotch was, and I'm going to just try to split it right from the top here and see if we can force that open. And this wood is seasoned. It's looking nice. I mean, it's really splitting nice. Whoop. All right, we'll get that. So there you go, there's our knot, and that's good. This morning I was filming and the batteries in my wireless mic died, so we learned a very valuable lesson there. But I wanted to get out and show you a little bit more about splitting wood before the snow gets too bad. So what I have now is a piece of oak that's going to be, I'm going to say this is probably about 16 inches in diameter. And what I'd like to do is show you how I go ahead and cut this down to smaller pieces. What I'll do is I'll go around the outside of the log and take off smaller pieces and kind of work my way around. And what you could also do is certainly just cut it into quarters. You could use a wedge or something. I try not to use a sledge and the wedge too often. It's kind of inconvenient for me. I basically don't use it. But let me just show you how we go about doing this. What we're going to do is just, we'll pick our line where we want to cut a few inches inside the bark of the log. And then rather than trying to cut it all at once, what I'll do is I'll cut it almost like splitting concrete or cutting concrete, is I'll work my way around the outside. Now this is fresh wood. It was cut probably about a month ago. And the other nice thing about this log is it doesn't really have any knots. But you'll just work your way around the outside, taking off a slab at a time. And once you get those slabs off, they'll split quite nicely. If we put them in our tire here, it really doesn't take much at all. And I know I touched on how I like to keep my maul sharp and not hit it in the ground. But I think half the reason this works so nice, besides this oak splitting so nice, is that this maul is nice and sharp and it just glides right through that wood. But you don't need to be Godzilla or the Hulk to split the wood. It's really just as easy to give two easier, well-placed hits than one giant hit, which you could end up hurting yourself if you overswing. And this is red oak I'm splitting. And this is yet again a reason why I don't understand why people make such a big deal about oak. Straight grained oak. Again, once you get knots involved, I don't care what wood, it's gonna be tough to split. So then we'll see if we can just work this piece down into smaller pieces. Sometimes even one more hit and this log is going to fall apart, but if I know that, I'll just work my way around the log and leave that there to hold it up. And there's that, and there's that. And this log is probably your best case scenario for splitting wood. It's not always going to be this nice. Oh, you got a little bit of a knot there, huh? As I'm doing this, you'll notice I'm not really taking haymaker shots here. I'm just looking to give enough force to split the piece of wood. If I get caught in the wood, then what I'll do is take another shot a little bit harder. This is probably getting boring right about now, but I just want to show you that it can be done. I'm going to burn this wood in a wood stove, so I make my pieces a little bit smaller than if I was burning a fireplace, so they're nice and dry and they'll catch quicker. So let's see if we can find a bit more of a difficult log to split. Okay, so this one's got a nice knot in it. This would have been a piece of an oak that would have been about this big around. I used a machine to cut this. I didn't use a sledge and wedge. I used my stickler on a Toro Dingo, and then I used a chainsaw to finish it off. But with this piece, since I know there's a knot right here, what I'm going to try to do is work away at the areas where I know there's no knot, and then I'll leave the knot, and I can always cut the knot with the chainsaw, the knotty piece with the chainsaw later. So first I'm going to just try to work some off the outside of this log. Now this piece is seasoned, and it seems like it actually catches the axe better if it's seasoned. It sticks in there. It's not really showing any signs of wanting to give. All right, there we go. So there's our first piece. Didn't kill myself, just kept working away at it. And this is going to split very nicely. Barely takes any effort to split these pieces. If there's not enough room to hit the piece of wood, or you're having a hard time, just flip it over. All right, now we'll try and do the same thing again. Just that my maul is getting stuck in the wood. I always try to split around the knots, not through them, until I've got them as small as I can get them. The grain of your knots is going to be different than the grain of your wood. So if you try to split the knot and the wood together, you're trying to split two different things at once. See if I can just get this one little piece off. All right. Now my knot is at the bottom, so I'm going to flip the piece around. See if we can keep shaving that wood off. Not enough room to hit it, just flip it over. If it's not splitting the way you want, flip it over. It does miracles. All right. Now this one's going to be a little tricky. So here's the knot we talked about, or the crotch. So I'm going to be able to split a little bit into this top, but at some point the top is going to not want to keep splitting. And once I reach that point, I'll usually just put this on the cut pile. See, that wants to split, but then it's hitting the knot. And it's just, there's no give down there. So there's the split goes, hits that knot, and it doesn't really want to go anywhere. So maybe what I'll try is I'll hit it once from this other side, but I'm pretty sure this one's going to be headed to the cut pile. And it looks very promising on this side. See how nice that's going? But on the other side, we got nothing but knot there. So let's see what happens if we hit it from this way. See, I actually got a piece out where there really isn't a knot. And I'm just gonna put this one on the cut pile. It's just gonna get ugly. All right, and this one's the same way. You see it's got a big knot. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's got a big knot down at the bottom. So I'll see if I can cut some off the outside, but this one's probably going to go on the cut pile as well. Starting to loosen up. And there's your knot. You just really can't get through those. I don't know even with a log splitter what would happen with that, but if you can get away from those knots, save them for the cut pile. That seems to work best for me. And the knots, wherever there's knots, there's usually going to be some pretty awkward pieces too. And when I stack my wood, what I'll usually do is I'll put those awkward pieces on top so my pile stacks nice, and then I have those awkward ones on top so they don't mess up the pile, the stability of the pile on the way up. And it looks like this one I actually cut with a chainsaw. But let's see, maybe we can hit it over here, get another piece to break off. And then maybe we can hit it here and get that to split off. A little bit too far to the left. Take it to the right about an inch and see if we can miss the knot. There's a surprise for you. So here's that piece of wood, and here's, here's the knot or the crotch. You can actually see where it came out of the tree here. So if I was going to split this, I would probably take it from this way. But I mean, look at the grain. Look at the grain we're dealing with. So I'm just going to put this on the cut pile. This is what makes wood cutting so frustrating, is when you try to, kill yourself splitting these, is just put them aside, put them on the cut pile. Use your muscles where they make a difference. That's got a bit of a knot at the top of it. And that'll do. So that's pretty much my my video about how I split wood. Some of the tips I have is just the shorter you cut them, the easier they're going to be to split. Get yourself a good chopping block. If you can find a tire, I really recommend you split with a tire. The whole video you watched me, not once did I have to bend down this far. I don't know, it feels unnatural because I do it so rarely, splitting wood. When I come to knots, I try to split around the knots, and then once the knot is small enough, I'll try to cut through the knot. If it's something that's going to put up a big fight, I'll just put it on the cut pile. Keep your maul sharp, not razor sharp, but keep a nice edge on it. Every time you use it, just touch up that edge a little bit. And I guess that's all the tips I can think of today. But if you watched this whole video, thanks a lot for watching and congratulations on making it. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.